Beyond. Please just.
Okay, you started with the weird things.
Yeah,
I was fine with them screaming.
Beyond. Welcome to Podcast Beyond. This is Podcast Beyond, episode 435. My name is Max Scoville. Joining me today, we have Marty Sleva.
Hi, Max.
Brian Altano.
What's up?
And Andrew Goldfarb.
Hey.
Yeah.
Andrew's a real sleepy boy and he's coughing.
I'm not really that sleepy. No, I thought there was going to be I don't know.
We're all kind of ragged because this is the week of the San Francisco Game Developers Conference, and that means it's sort of like finals week. Mm-hmm. Like all of us are kind of in and out of the office, and the schedule's all screwed up, and you're kind of staying up later, but also coming in earlier. So we're currently recording this on Wednesday, early in the morning, and yesterday they announced all the details that we were waiting to hear about on the PlayStation VR. We had a little press conference. I went there with Marty. Mm-hmm. Marty, what did we learn?
Sort of the big thing right off the bat was that we finally got a price and date-ish for PSVR, so it'll be launching in the States, globally actually. It'll be $399 and it'll be launching in October. They didn't say what the actual date was, but sometime in the month of October. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of controversy that came out within the hour after this.
Wait, so a gaming announcement fostered some sort of disagreement?
Sabatier. So it's $399, which, in comparison to Oculus or Vive, which are $600 and $800, seems incredibly cheap. But then it turns out you need a PlayStation Move camera in order to use this, which, what is that, $40, $60?
It's MSRP is $59.99, but it's like you can find it right now on Amazon. It's like 40 something.
Yeah, depending where you are with tax, that's going to come out to about $500.
Yeah, for reference, that's for all the head tracking that this thing's going to be doing. Right. Which other headsets have other alternative ways to do that. I know that the Samsung thing is basically just using your phone's motion tracking stuff in it. This works a little differently than that, so you will need that setup. The setup itself, like if you've actually looked at all the stuff in the box, there's a lot of stuff. Yep. I think this is we're getting into that territory of sort of like remember seeing commercials for like the Wii, and you're like, oh, so it's just like you just have a remote and it's fine. But then it was like when you plugged in the nunchuck, and then there was like all these peripherals and all this other
sensor
stuff,
sensor
bars and charging cables, and all of a sudden you're
balance
looking
boards.
at that sort of like lone vision of like the guy sitting in the room with the headset on, like experiencing a different world. It's that plus a lot of cable clutter.
Yeah, totally. And it doesn't come with the two Move controllers,
right.
Which are not necessary for all the games. I've played plenty of games that you just use the DualShock 4.
Yeah,
which
the DualShock
4
4 does work as a Move controller, basically.
Yeah, I mean, there's certain things like in a game like Job Simulator, each of them is one of your hands, which you sort of can't do with just a DualShock.
Right.
But there are some games that could double with just the DualShock.
I'm wondering if they're going to allow you to use two controllers instead of Move, because they basically work the same. You've got the light bars on there, which is for tracking.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you've played like what's that one of those stupid robots? The Room, where there's a room with robots.
Playroom.
The Playroom.
Yeah. Stupid robot.
The room with robots.
Stupid robot room.
Just flick those little idiots around.
And we should mention that's free for everybody who gets PSVR. You'll be able to download that.
Yeah, VR
free.
Playroom, which is something I've played a couple of the games of. And it's like a collection of sort of tech demo, fun little party things, which are actually cool. So yeah, we were predicting last week what stuff would come bundled in, and I think we shot a little bit high. But also,
for now. So that's the thing. Like the whole thing now is because of everyone talking about the camera and the moves and all these questions. Shuhei, in an interview yesterday with Tech Insider, did say that there will be a bundle,
which is
at
Tech
least in North
Insider,
America.
not Tech Insider.
Tech Insider.
The number one outlet for news about kangaroo fighting.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not surprising. I mean, it's March. They have 7 months to talk about bundles, to figure out pricing, to throw in all kinds of other things. Like I think. Like we talked about with Alana last week, I can see them doing kind of a family bundle that's like a couple family-friendly games, and doing like kind of a pro bundle that comes with a camera and two controllers and more of a hardcore game.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot easier to come out and say $399 buy than it is to say $499, because that's I mean that gets back to like the PS3 launch E3 where they got into and then you're actually eclipsing the price of the console itself.
Plus,
which is
it's
still
halfway
required
through the life cycle of the console. Like that's the thing. Like you can't. People who are mad about this, like. I bought a PS camera 2 years ago for $60. I'm glad it's not included in the box. I won't have to pay for it again.
Have you got a lot of use out of it?
I've literally never plugged it in.
So,
but I mean, like the point is, like they're actually the people who got really mad about this yesterday as kind of a knee jerk thing. I think this is actually like good of them to offer just a basic vanilla bundle with just the bare minimum of what you need for PSVR, and then obviously there will be kind of ramps up from there.
Well, that's what you and I were talking about this yesterday. Like, this goes in two different ways, right? One, you can be upset that it doesn't come with what you need. Two, you can be happy that if you have the things you need already, that you don't have to buy second versions of them.
Exactly.
Like when I buy PSVR, maybe I'm still sort of on the fence, for $399, I'll take that PlayStation camera out of the storage and plug it back in. Everything will be good to go. I don't have Move controllers because I never got into that at the beginning.
I have the Move controllers that's like the nunchuck and the Move, so I have to get
pickles, they call them.
the pickles. Yeah, I got to get the second. I got to get the second one with the ball,
wand. Yeah.
The wand,
the clown nose gun.
Yeah.
You made a good point yesterday that the thing that's hard is the kid on Christmas who gets a PS4 and a PSVR and opens it and then
That
can't
poor
play
little
with
boy.
it.
Yeah.
That
I mean,
poor girl.
that kid's probably doing
that
just
poor
fine, but-
child, which is like nice, cool hat for Christmas.
To be fair, that is not to be understated. Like there are a lot of, I know we're all in the know. If you're listening to the show right now, guess what? You're already in the inner circle. Like everyone in this room gets it. Like we're looking at the box, we're flipping it over, we're reading press releases on this stuff years before they even become a reality. But yeah, the kid on Christmas, poor little Johnson.
Yeah.
Whose family spent $800 on it.
Well, so I was comparing it to this is Sony's the 3DS doesn't come with a AC adapter, right? Which is like they just assume you have it already, but you might not. And I actually pulled up a story. It's from 2014, so I don't know how much the stats have changed. To me, I don't think they've changed a lot, but 15% of PS4 owners in 2014 owned the camera, which means 85% didn't. That the number of PS4 owners has increased, insanely since then. And I don't know if the number of cameras has as well.
There was a shortage for a while.
Yeah.
I feel like there was a shortage for a while.
Dude, at launch, it was insane. They were like $200 on eBay for a while. It was ridiculous.
Everybody wanted to be the next big PewDiePie.
Yeah.
PewDiePie.
Oh, I mean, and the thing is, though, like that's
he bought them all actually, so they couldn't.
That's not to be understated, though. Like the camera actually
Made his own Google car.
the camera is
plugged
actually
into PS4.
awesome for reasons that aren't PSVR. Like the camera, like the reason I got the camera was because at the time I was like ambitious and like I'm gonna stream, and I like never streamed.
No, you do that
But
weird
I mean,
thing where you go on, you have that one private Twitch channel and you just show your wiener.
Yeah, exactly. Only Max watches.
Yeah. I get notifications late at night.
So this is going to be a thing they'll put back in stores, hopefully with a price drop. I'm guessing that the $499 bundle, and I'm just guessing at that price, but that sounds about right because if this thing is, if the camera is retailing for $60 and the Move controllers we assume will retail for around the same price because peripherals aren't cheap anymore, then you're looking at a $500 bundle. They can sweeten the deal by throwing a game or something in there.
I really think there will be a $500 bundle with
You are obsessed
a
with
camera.
the fact that they're adding rigs.
What, dude? Like, I don't know what rigs is if it's not bundled with PSVR. Like, I don't know who. So there was this big list of games that were at the event you went to yesterday, and this is why I'm not buying a PSVR at launch because there are no games. Like, there's nothing I want to play on this. There's like a million cool tech demos. There's a million things that are fun at events and stuff, but there's nothing that like makes me want to put down $400 plus the cost of a game to play this fall.
I mean, it's an odd product in that sense. Also, like, they haven't gotten to the part where they announce the games. This is kind of how it always is. Around GDC, they start talking hardware stuff if there's stuff to talk about, and then come E3, come Gamescom, Comic-Con, whatever, they start actually showing stuff off.
They'll flesh out the lineup.
They announced Battlefront will have an exclusive PSVR experience.
That's going to be a word we are going to get so sick of.
Yep.
I mean,
And
this week they announced the Assassin's Creed experience, and like that is,
And so they said there will be 50 games for the end of the year. Like, there will be stuff, and it's like, so right now, Riggs, unless I'm forgetting something, is the only first-party Sony game from the ground up for VR, which is the reason I keep bringing it up as a pack-in game, because it's like, what else do you do with
like
it?
Playroom.
There's Playroom.
There's
But I think
Playroom, there's
There's
also
World VR, which is what...
Yeah, London's demos. That's
Worlds it includes the Deep, which is where a shark bites you, and it's got the Heist and the Getaway, which are awesome. I love those. Curious what else gets rolled into that, but it's going to be kind of like
maybe like the kitchen. Maybe
so it's also like
thing in there.
let's not understate the sort of hype and excitement that gets into people's heads when they buy a launch product. Like there are so many games I've purchased with a launch console or a launch product that I never would have bought halfway through.
Killzone, Shadowfall, and Rise this generation.
I mean, there are Vita games I bought at launch that Knack sold better than Super Mario 3D World. Like, that game sold incredibly well. It's very sad, But I think people get caught up in the hype, and that's where you'll be like, well, I bought this thing for $400. I got to do something with it. Here's rigs. Here's this. Here's that. The big absent one, obviously, was No Man's Sky, and I think a big part of that, obviously, I mean, it feels like all but confirmed at this point, but I think the big part of that is that they probably don't want to undercut the launch sales of that game because it will be coming out.
So
does
it feel all but confirmed though? Like, have they, like, that's the thing. Like, we all think it's all but confirmed, but like actual Sean Murray quotes, like I don't think they've never
Yeah,
ruled
he's
it
always
out.
talked
but-
about
too much.
He's always
Yeah.
talked about how it was like this is a childhood dream of his, but I legitimately think they are 100% focused on getting this game finished out the door, and then
they'll start messing with
supporting
it.
it afterwards.
Really,
Yes,
a
I
really
agree.
interesting thing, and I ran this by Brian. If at E3 they want to come out and they know that everyone's waiting for No Man's Sky, and they know that VR is a thing that people are talking about, but what are they going to do? They've told the price point. If they were like, pre-order of PlayStation VR today, and you will get No Man's Sky when it comes out next week free, which has VR support coming sometime in the future.
Right.
Yeah,
Like
that's
that would be
interesting.
one of those things that people get so excited for.
Yeah.
I mean that would be such a smart
Yeah.
thing because
Yeah, that'd
you
be
get,
huge.
You get something now. You get something in your hand, that week or whatever. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm also really curious about how it works. Like, does it do anything if you don't have the camera set up? Like, if you put it on, does it just
It
work?
said it requires it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's really interesting. That if you it doesn't even function.
No,
if
it
they're
doesn't
talking
even
for
function.
like,
Yeah.
I mean, do we know that like 100% for sure that it doesn't function?
I don't know.
function?
Like I don't know what the
Sure.
idea of function is, but
Yeah.
Let me get you. I'll pull it up.
Okay.
Well, so we can talk
there's
while you're
also-
pulling that up. But I think one of the big things they talked about yesterday, you're probably about to get into, was how it supports all PS4 games in this sort of like theater mode.
Yep.
And
That's what it requires.
yeah. And the theater mode option, which is basically like I could play Uncharted 4 with PSVR this fall.
yeah.
What that really means is I can pretend I'm playing Uncharted 4 on a massive projection screen inside of a room where I can kind of look left and right to the sides of the screen, but it's not going to give me like a 360 or even 180 perspective inside the game itself.
Yeah.
It's simulating a theater experience,
Yeah.
which is probably not going to be as good resolution as the TV you have
No,
in
of course
your
not.
apartment right now.
But if you have a very small TV,
Then
or
that's
if you've
great.
got somebody
Sure.
else using the TV,
Yeah,
you get a
then
cool
that's
hat
great.
you put on your face.
But that means that on the very most simple basis of looking left and right, you will need head tracking. So you will need the camera for that. So
Yeah.
I think even in the most rudimentary ways of extrapolating what you can do with this thing, you're going to need to move your head left and right.
So
You
on
need
the
camera for that.
cinematic mode, I've been talking about this for a while. I think that it's one of those things that people are underestimating how much it's going to be popular for VR. I think that if you've used the Netflix app that comes with the Samsung Gear, it's kind of stunning because it's like, I mean, it's one. I hate watching videos on my phone because it's like it's small. It's sort of like it's hard to hear it unless I have headphones in, and even then it's kind of disorienting. But to have like this fake living room where I'm just like, all right, yeah, I'm just gonna hold my head like I normally do. I don't usually look down to watch stuff.
Yeah.
I think this could be really huge. It's an odd product in the sense that remember that PlayStation TV that allowed like basically like the 3D split screen thing where two people could play a game. It feels kind of like that in a weird way, like because I feel like most of the people are going to be getting this are people who have a living room setup, have like they have a normal TV and all that. But I keep thinking of like the dorm room setup or like the small apartment setup, and maybe you don't have that room for a big TV, and you're like, you know what? Here's my new display. Like
Right.
now I have my PS4 tucked under my bed, and I've got my.
Also, you legitimately don't need a TV anymore. You can take your PS4 and your PSVR with you on the road. Just plug it into any outlet, and
Could you without the camera? Like
you can plug the camera.
So
in. You don't need
that's-
the camera with the TV.
Interesting.
But
You
like, I
legitimately
don't.
don't. Like Adam Boyce told me, you don't need the TV anymore.
Yeah.
That's interesting because like so let's say you're on a plane, you want to plug your PS4 into the power supply and have PSVR on
Yeah,
to
you
watch
put
it.
you put the cool camera on the seat in front of you, so the man doesn't knock it over with his
I mean,
big
it
leg.
reminds me of like
yeah, exactly. That's where I'm confused about like what that looks like.
like
Looks like a disaster. That's what it looks like.
a friend of the show, Nick Robinson, who works at Polygon, was doing. He brought his Wii U on the plane and was having the flight attendants help him make a Mario Maker level because that's the thing you can do. And that's what this is sort of interesting to me because I understand the need for that, especially if you have roommates or if you're in a dorm, especially. But like. When I was in college, I didn't have $900 to spend on toys like this.
Sure.
I just didn't. It wasn't really an option. It's also, I think that the viewing trends of human beings in general are moving more towards that kind of second screen experience thing, multitasking. Like PSVR is still in a very sort of like honed in, isolated on one screen experience. Whereas like I know when I got my Wii U or my Vita or my 3DS, one of my favorite things to do was to marathon through a TV show while I was down here playing a video game, you know? And I think that's a sort of multitasking that you're not gonna, that VR is completely moving away from in a lot of ways. So while I do see the merits of that, it's also like kind of the opposite of the way people are interacting with things now.
That's a really good point.
I hate the idea so much of sitting and playing a game or watching a movie in my apartment, and I get a text and I have to unstrap this thing from my face to look at my phone, respond to it.
It's very disorienting.
Really? You don't like that? You don't like the idea of having a situation where you're not interrupted by a text?
Like, because Max, I'm gonna be interrupted by a text. If
right.
I would
turn your phone off. Like, enjoy something in it. Like, that's the thing, is the second screen experience is one thing.
I agree with the idea of
Stop it. You are glued to your phone anyway, which is part of your job, and that's great. But like,
I'm not talking about not taking an hour-long break from my phone. Obviously, yeah, it's great to watch something and be immersed. Also, I have a life, and human beings are going to contact me, and I'm not going to say,
what if your life
I'm
was
so immersed in Uncharted 4 multiplayer that I'm not answering. No, I mean, it's getting up and going to the bathroom. It's someone knocking on your door. It's any
the text is a metaphor in this scenario.
Exactly.
The text is also a dog.
Exactly.
Or a kid.
It is your roommate asking you a question.
Yeah,
it is any of the.
It is any of the 500 or a kid or a roommate.
You're hilarious.
No,
anyway,
I get what you're saying.
It's the 500 situations where having something literally strapped to your head that you have to remove to take a break is like super disruptive.
I mean,
no, it's not. I played with this yesterday. It takes PSVR of any of the headsets takes literally 3 seconds.
There is a
off.
button underneath that you can slide forward and you look down.
It is of the Vive and the Oculus. It is the only one I could put on by myself within 5 seconds, for it to be.
I will say,
comfortable.
regardless of comfort of the headset level, the sort of like dipping in and out of that world to me is the tiniest bit disorienting. Like, we played Werewolf Within for an hour and a half on Friday afternoon, and the few times I took the headset off and went back in, like it felt like when you get out of a pool.
Oh yeah.
and you jump back in. It's like, well, there's a few minutes of like, okay, I'm not in the pool anymore.
And that's the thing that throws me off every time. It's and with Vive, like, yes, totally, Vive is like it's more complicated to take off than PSVR is, but it's like when I was playing the Portal demo and Mitch asked me a question and I pulled myself out of Vive for a second to answer him, and then I put it back on, and it like, I legitimately, like, my brain was so confused. Like, it took like 30 seconds for me to catch up of like pulling myself out and getting back in, and like,
this, like,
honestly, like,
we're all focusing on the $60 camera thing. I think there are far bigger sort of questions at play here. Like, IGN yesterday tweeted, and IGN has, I don't even know how many millions of Twitter followers. They tweeted out like, are you excited for VR? And it was the responses were exactly split. It was 50-50. Half the people yes, half the people no. Yep. And some people, obviously, like, price is a factor. Other people are probably just trying to figure out which one. Like, the big thing about this PSVR, it's cheaper than the rest of them, but like a crappier car is cheaper than a good car too. Like, the Oculus is incredibly expensive, but scaled in comparison to, and you were talking about this yesterday, right? Like, the PSVR is the price of a PS4. The Oculus is half the price of a really, really good PC. It's also far more powerful. So yeah, like, you're getting in on the entry level of this thing, but it's not as strong as the competition, which is going to be a little daunting, especially coming from PS4 owners who have kind of had, not including PC, the best performing multi-platform games across most of this generation. You know, so you are taking a step backwards with that. But yeah, there's a lot of things at play. I was talking in the Podcast Beyond group about how, like, my issue with this thing is the sort of like the social ideology of sitting on a couch next to somebody I'm completely ignoring in a 1-bedroom apartment, like that I married somebody. And there was this guy Anthony in there who had just gotten married like 5 days before, and he's like, "This is gonna be a tough sell." And it was kind of like, well, I mean, have this conversation early because you just got married now, so it's sort of like, you know, prison rules or whatever. But I think that, like, a lot of people who have kids, who have pets, like, it's going to sort of be a thing. And yeah, you can wait for everybody to go to sleep and stuff like that, but there's a lot more at play here than just price and specs. Like, this is a cultural conversation.
Now here's another point to that. Of the people who were, you know, polled, the thousands of people on Twitter who were responding to this question about like, are you excited for VR or whatever? How many of them have done it? I think that's another question entirely. I think that this is something you really do have to experience for yourself.
Of course.
Yeah. A lot of people have
It's a hard thing to demo.
I mean, you know, you have that image of the dude in Hackers, like, with the thing on his face, or the Johnny Mnemonic trailer, like this stuff that is, you know, 25 years out of date. and I think that it's going to change a lot of people's minds when they actually try it out for themselves.
When they go down to the mall and get their own head lice.
Exactly. Yeah. When you get a nice staph infection from that cool spongy thing.
And that
Which is the gross thing about all this, right? Is like we're demoing these games and everyone's putting hand
wiping them
sanitizer
down.
on their faces.
There's also like the sour grapes aspect. You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the fact is, this is an incredibly expensive luxury item. This is an expensive device,
Yeah.
and I think there is that habit of people, especially on the internet, where your opinion is basically currency of here's what I think about this,
really
here's
good
how I
point.
react to this. I think a lot of people are like, on some level, they're like, I want this, but I don't want to be like. It's easier to be like, I don't want this than to be like, I want this and I can't have this. You know,
Yeah.
and we see this a lot. We see this. This is why people
There's also
get.
fanboyism at play.
Sure.
I mean, we tweeted the question immediately after the PSVR thing, so it's assumed that that's what we're talking about
Yeah.
entirely. And, you know, if you're a Nintendo guy or an Xbox guy, you're probably looking at it being like, no, I'm not interested in that.
And that's what's so
Right,
funny.
right.
It's funny
There's a lot
for
of
new
factors at play.
tech because, like, for VR, like it's that rising tide lifts all boats things. Like, it's like if you like VR, it's so funny to be weirdly like rejecting certain manufacturers or whatever because like now is the time where it's like buying PSVR is good for Oculus.
I mean, if
Buying
you
Oculus is
like, go
good
for it. If you
Vive.
like games, you should just be happy that people are making them. But instead,
Yeah.
we've been
Sure.
like, I had to raise my textbook in second grade to block a milk carton that got thrown across the room because my friend said that Sega Genesis sucked. Like, this has been a war forever, and I love
Hey,
your utopia where it all goes away.
Maybe in this brave new world of crazy expensive hats that you put on your face, from the cheaper $20 Google Cardboards to the $6,000 Vive rooms that you get, big spheres full of weird the Cerebros. Just like can we just be like, you know what? If we're putting something on your face to see something else, maybe we're all on the same side here. Like maybe let's not make a console war out of this. Like please, just
Okay.
everybody just.
So we're
it's gonna be though. I mean,
I know.
We're 22 minutes in the episode, and we've talked about 3 games.
Yeah.
Which is, we could talk about
a
price
problem.
all we want.
Yeah.
We could talk about what the future of this technology is. We could talk about what this means for society as a whole. We could talk about what this means for Anthony's marriage.
Can I talk about a game?
But the factor is, what are these games? So
Can I
we
talk
played a
about
bunch of
a game?
games. Yes, I want to talk about games.
First game I played. I saw it. It's called Gary the Gull. I went up and I said, "What's this game?" They said, "It's not a game," which is really weird to have someone tell you at an event that's
You're gonna hear that a lot.
PlayStation
You're gonna hear that a lot in
left and
VR.
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interactive movie, and I was like, "All right." And I hopped in there, and these guys are like former Bungie, former Pixar, and basically, and it's
The big two.
incredibly charming. You sit down. And you're sitting on a beach, and you look around, and there's palm trees, and there's lovely, like, kind of, Hawaiian guitar music playing or whatever. And this seagull shows up, and you're kind of like, there's a drawing in the sand of like a sun, and he starts asking you about what your thoughts are on art. And you can nod yes or shake your head no or just not react.
don't like it.
Yeah.
Not a fan of the arts.
And so this guy starts, smooth talking you.
Gary
And
the
whole thing
Gull
is,
here.
They told me that there is normally there's voice recognition, so you
Yeah.
can actually talk to this awful bird.
Are you holding a controller or anything like that?
No controller.
So it's all
head.
That's great. That's really cool.
Yeah, nothing but head. But like basically you're it's a choose your own adventure just with yes or no questions.
That's really cool.
And apparently there are branching stories or whatever, but I think there are, but they weren't showing them for this demo. I mean, it's one of those things that's still kind of, this is very very slice of demo, vertical slice kind of thing. And basically the gull is trying to trick you into looking away from your cooler so that he can go in there, and he'll be like, "Hey, there's a unicorn over there. Oh my God, look at that unicorn. Look at it." And if you look over, then you look back, and he's like rooting around your cooler, and he hops out, and he's like, "Oh, your cooler tried to eat me. Get me out of there."
So they made an experience based on that thing you do in like third grade where you're like, hey, look over there, Superman. You take someone's French fries.
It's like it's made you look the interactive movie.
See, I feel like I would have I think I would have loved a game like Firewatch a lot more if it was just truncated down to an experience like this, where a lot of the movement was handled for me, but decisions were based on like my own perception, looking left and right, like nodding to menus.
And then like clicking through dialogue
Yeah,
choices
or whatever
and
it
stuff.
is, like talking itself. I mean, that's why I really liked what we did in Werewolf Within, because there was a vocal aspect to that, which I actually didn't really think was part of VR, and a social aspect as well.
I haven't associated VR with something that 8 people can play.
Yeah.
And it's so like that. It's funny because I super roll my eyes at the word experience, but also I like the idea that people are thinking outside the box with this. Like I think Werewolves Within is a really cool example of like it never occurred to me what a good idea a VR like essentially tabletop game is, or like just sitting around with your friends, and like that works so much better than I think a lot of the early VR demos are like you can ride a roller coaster, you can like play an FPS or whatever, but it's like that's not really the value of what VR can be.
Well, the presentation we were in for this game started with this dystopian, stock photo of a guy in this like decrepit one-bedroom apartment that's falling apart around him. There's always those pictures of a guy. There's that meme going around of like a guy takes off a VR helmet and like his house is burned down. It's gone. Or there's that like clawing at his own skin, Korn album cover looking thing of a guy sitting in a corner with a headset on, just like and the picture on the side's like he's kissing someone. It's really sad. Yeah. So I like the idea of it being social. That being said, it reminds me a lot of when four of my friends wanted to play Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles, and we all needed Game Boy Advances and link cables, and that got into the couple $100 territory. This is like, I mean, to do an 8-player VR game, you're looking at like $6,000 worth of stuff.
So but I mean, if we all want to play PS4 online, that's
and we have them already.
Exactly.
And there it is.
Same deal. I think that we played it in a totally like not ideal situation because we were all in the same room.
Yeah.
We were picking up each other's audio. I mean, it's, if you've never played it, it's like Mafia or sort of
Werewolf.
Heads Up 7-Up or whatever, Werewolf. But basically, you're trying to guess who's the werewolf, and everyone kind of, it's kind of hilarious to see such an expensive solution to a game that you can play with literally scraps of paper.
With napkins and a pen.
But it's, I think that it's an entirely different thing just on a social level because people do like to Skype. People like to talk on the phone. Like as far as it being an isolating
talks
thing.
on the phone anymore.
Some people talk on the phone, or Skype or Google Hangouts or whatever. But the fact is, like, when you do that, you're not exactly being like, you're not including people around you necessarily either. I mean, when people put on a headset to chat online or whatever, that's also kind of isolating.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there playing a game and you're talking to your friend in another country.
Yeah.
And one thing that I think that we're kind of overlooking is that there is. I don't know what game this will be or what experience this will be that really grabs onto this, but to have something that's like even just a lobby. Just like
that's what the opening of those games were. That we were all sitting around a campfire, and Alana was playing with us, and she said afterwards, like, I could use this to hang out with my friends back in Australia.
Yeah.
Like literally as I guess we're playing a game on the side, but
like
this is how I could catch up with 6 people at the same time.
6 of us were sitting in a circle around a campfire in one setting, and the next setting we were sitting around what looked like that hole from Game of Thrones, which was kind of terrifying. But it had there were interesting social aspects to it. Like you can stand up in real life, and when you stand up in real life, your character in the game stands up and he's like, hey, I have something to say. I'm definitely not the werewolf because this is, and it's just really funny to be like, and everyone in the room's like, sit down, shut up. And there was a part where there's a thing you can do, there's a mechanic in the game where you can lean to the side, and like if Marty's sitting next to me in the game, I can lean over and be like, hey, so I really think Max is a werewolf. And you see the two characters zoom into each other, and they're whispering, and no one else can hear their conversation. And at one point, Alana's to my left, and I'm sitting here, and her and I both lean into each other to whisper to different people in the game. So for anybody looking in, it looks like these two people are whispering to each other, but we're talking to completely different people. We're worried we're going to bump into each other's heads. Like I actually thought it was, aside from like our voices cutting out each other, I thought it was a really fun thing to do with all of us in the same room with each other. I actually don't know if it would be as fun if you remove that setting.
But the weird thing is almost no one will play it the way you guys did.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think it is way more interesting as a possible like chat client or a virtual reality chat room than I do as a game. I think the werewolf element is almost like kind of irrelevant, really.
Yeah,
I'm almost bummed that it's a called Werewolves Within. Like I almost would like the idea of this being like a thing where they can keep adding, like basically have it be a hub and you can add mini games and stuff to it.
Yeah.
I mean, like you guys ever go in like Google Hangouts and you can like add hats and like mustaches and stuff. Or
you and I do it every month.
Or there's that stupid like those goofy things people put on like on Instagram where it's like, oh, your face is a rabbit. Like that whole avatar creation. Like
so the one thing we started doing was
home kind of stuff.
The D-pad has different sort of emotes, and one of them's pointing, and one of them's like put your arms in the air, and we did a wave. Like 6 people in a row were just like, oh, with their arms in the air. We did a wave around the room, and it was like, this is so dumb. We could do this for free with our friends, but we never would because we're here in this like weird haunted medieval setting. You look in the background, there's tombstones and ghosts. There's like a swing with like a fake duck on it. There's like ice wolves and stuff like that. Like it's just like yeah, we can do this in real life, but
Yeah.
we can't sit in this place together.
Yeah.
Like we're in a virtual space, hanging out as friends. It's very weird.
So for everyone terrified of the fact that all we're talking about are things that seem like they have the most minimal interactivity ever, I played literally 15 hours of VR in the last 2 days, which was very weird, and I'll talk about
And
it
you're
in another
almost
setting.
completely blind now.
I feel very strange.
kind of
They're
almost
doing a
blind,
good
yeah.
clap from the outside. But I played games that did have like stricter mechanics and rules and sort of creativity. Eagle Flight, which was a game that's also a Ubisoft game, which I think they revealed last year.
It's that same dream sequence from Assassin's Creed 3 or the bird sequence from Far Cry Primal.
Sort of, yeah. Honestly, they're like taking the same thing. You're an eagle
PSX,
flying
yeah.
around sort of not post-apocalyptic Paris, but it's post-human Paris. So all the humans are gone, and there's just like animals roaming the streets.
Thousands of birds.
There's so many birds, but you're an eagle, and you're using your head. I played on Oculus, but it's coming to PSVR as well, and you're using your head to control. So you look up, you look down to control your pitch, and then you sort of tilt your head to the side to control just the way your birds sort of moving in the air.
Do you flap your arms?
You don't flap your arms at all.
Will you
It's
feel
huge
compelled
miss.
to flap your arms? I feel like you probably will.
I was playing against Palmer Luckey, so I felt weird to flap my arms in front of a billionaire. But I beat him.
He
told
wears
me to-
That's actually
So
a
that was
different
good.
VR game. Is
Yeah.
flap your arms in front of a billionaire.
Simulator.
on iOS and Android.
What was it, Cliff Jumper?
Yeah, but it was actually like honestly the sensation of flying through Paris in VR with like just swooping in and out of arches and through parks
Yep.
and sort of like just narrowly avoiding crashing into bridges. Like it felt really cool and it
that's
felt
thrilling.
so intuitive. Yeah, and it was one of those things I was worried. I was like, God, am I going to get nauseous from this? And absolutely not. Like it was
Interesting.
It was incredibly natural.
Oddly enough, I played a game. That I've already played, but it wasn't VR before. It's called Nog. It's a weird little puzzle game that I saw at E3 last year.
Double Fine's producing it.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, or publishing
Interesting.
it. Yeah.
It is. It reminds me a lot of Hohokam, except it's centered around these weird heads. Like Nog is sort of like noggin, So you've got these big, kind of colorful heads, and you kind of feel around and you interact with different parts of them. Like you'll like pull on an ear or something, and then this like panel will appear, and you basically can flip the head around, and there's like a little diorama, and there's like a house full of these colorful little people, and basically there's this kind of like it's somewhere between like a puzzle game and a pop-up book and like maybe a music box.
Yeah.
Like it's not really gamey. You're just kind of interacting with stuff until something happens. Oddly enough, that is the game that has made me the most dizzy on PSVR of anything I've played.
Yeah.
Of including like a high-speed car chase. Just it's bizarre because it has these like very psychedelic kind of like just kind of segues between sequences where it just rushes at you, and it's like a After Dark screensaver on crack, and like I didn't dislike it. Like it didn't make me queasy, but it gave me butterflies, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoy that. Like I was like, ooh, a little bit of like a giggly sensation.
Well, I'll have that feeling in 3D platformers or like some Assassin's Creed games when you're right at the top and you're on that eagle's nest perch thing and you're looking down. I start getting like little pins and needles in my fingers and my feet, and I'm just like, oh man, am I like a little bit afraid of heights? Like there's that sort of that thrill to that, and then also knowing that it's not real and that there's no actual ramifications to you falling and that you'll probably land in hay.
Eagle Flight sounds like an entire game based around jumping off into haystacks.
Yeah.
Which is just it's just so much.
Oh my God,
it's
there's
so
so
much
much
fun
scrolling.
feeling.
Like it.
Really?
Yeah.
Did you
that's
do any
great.
Thumper? Because Thumper's a game, like I really like Thumper just playing it at E3 or whatever, but or PAX. But I'm curious to see what that would be in VR. Like how was that?
Thumper's a little bit. It's a little bit like amplitude and frequency. You're sort of. It's just really like electro, sort of techno. Very colorful, surreal thing that the screen, as things are constantly rushing towards you and you're sort of moving along a path trying to hit nodes on a beat, and it plays exactly sort of how you would imagine a thing like that would play in 2D, but in 3D it was between that and Rez, which I played at PSX. Some of the sort of craziest, when I took it off after 5 minutes, I was like, oh, I forgot I'm in a room in San Francisco surrounded by colleagues in the industry.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it was the thing where, like any good puzzle game where you sort of, if you play Super Hexagon for a long time, or if you really get into like Rock Band or Guitar Hero, where you're so immersed in just the single path, this small image, and then you look away from that path and you almost see it.
Yeah, like you look at
elsewhere.
a wall and you see
it
the lane
almost looks
moving.
like the nodes are moving.
Yeah.
It was like, what was it, like Tetrasitis in the 80s or whatever, where it's just
totally.
like you carry it into the real world and all of a sudden you're fitting things
Yeah,
together.
I mean, that's what people were like. Andrew was talking about that with The Witness. Immersiveness when he was playing it so much.
yeah.
Walking like downtown San Francisco and looking at buildings and being like, we could chase
I can
snakes
draw a
around
line
it.
up
You
there.
guys ever see Maximum Overdrive?
Yeah.
Is that part where the guy's in the arcade and he's like stealing all the cigarettes because
Yep.
the machine's just barfing him out, and then he sees his arcade game and he's like, yo mama, and then it electrocutes him.
Yeah, seriously.
Because he's like hypnoptized by it.
Yeah.
I don't know, that just made me think of that for some reason.
I also got to play Golem a little bit.
Yeah, what's
yesterday.
up with Golem? Like,
I mean, that's the if people want the like, I want a real game, you know, quote unquote, whatever the hell
I'm
that
getting
means.
vibes of Rise from it, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, a little
Like
bit
it's-
in terms of it.
Rise the
minimal-
Xbox One launch
Yeah.
game?
Yeah. Like for better, like when they first were talking about that, and they were like, "Yeah, it's a Connect game where you fight with their hands or whatever,"
Right,
and you're like,
right.
it just like Golem. It's weird. It looks, it's kind of, it's not ugly, but it is, you know. Like, and I've realized that all the games I've enjoyed in VR are like incredibly colorful and like, or abstract,
Yeah.
or just like
not going for realism whatsoever.
or just beautiful. And I think that there needs to, like it's kind of odd because like I'm super down to play like a gross, violent, like gritty, stupid, in your face kind of game, but I have zero compulsion to play that in VR.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go there, you know? Like I want to be someplace nice. Like I'm totally happy sitting on a beach and talking to a seagull, or like looking at these weird abstract colorful heads, or being
Yeah.
an eagle flying around.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean,
there's
that
that. I mean, I think there's like that sort of positive escapism that I think a lot of people would look for in an experience like that. And it's also the fact that like this thing is not the most specced out kit in the world, and going for realism all the time might not be the best opportunity here. I think going for sort of that flatter, colorful, more cel-shaded look is going to A, make a more positive escapism experience, and B, play up to the specs of this thing better. Like I don't think you're going to be able to run, you know, GTA 5 PC at max settings type of thing on this.
Which
you know?
is so it's super interesting that you bring that up, because I played a lot of Vive and Oculus and PSVR this week, and I purposefully played a job simulator on all three. We have job
interesting.
simulator on Vive here in the office, and then on Monday I played it at the Oculus event, and then yesterday I played it on PSVR to see like, hey, I've run through this exact same 5-minute demo on 3 different things. How does it pan out? And
Did you play it with the touch controllers in Oculus? Or?
yes, I played it touch on everything. So PSVR, I could say the headset is the most comfortable of the 3, especially for someone with glasses. I'm super blind without my glasses, and so I have to wear them in the thing. I could finagle an Oculus or a Vive to sort of make it semi-comfortable, but it never felt actually comfortable.
Did you feel with the Oculus that like it would sort of shift a little bit during sessions, or like you would? So I found with Werewolf Within that we played on Oculus, right?
Yeah.
I was constantly sort of like, I locked in and it was good, and then like a half an hour would go by and I noticed there was like this sort of like window frame of stuff that was a little blurry outside of the picture to me. And my vision's pretty much perfect. There was a part where you pull up a book to read the rules of like, oh, so you're a villager, this is what you can do. You're a werewolf, this is what you can do. You're an overseer, blah, blah, blah. So that book was highly focused for me at some points, and then others wasn't.
Sure.
So I found myself like fidgeting with it a little more than I wanted to. It's the same way I feel sort of when I go to see a 3D movie. And I'm like, I put on the glasses, and then like halfway through, I'm like, oh, it feels a little like Vaseline on the outside here, and I adjust it a little bit.
The Vive and the Oculus it has a higher total resolution than PSVR does, because it's 2 separate lenses, 2 separate
Right.
screens. PSVR is a single screen, is one screen in front of your eyes, which I really liked.
Okay.
As someone who has very terrible eyes, I liked the fact that it was just one screen. It almost, even though it doesn't have it is a smaller total screen than the two on the other ones combined, it felt bigger to me. It almost felt like you were looking at a screen in a movie theater.
Oh, weird.
And the resolution definitely wasn't as good. Like
Did
I
it have
played
that-
Job Simulator, and it looked a little bit fuzzy compared to Vive
Now the
and
fuzziness
Oculus.
is that like a lot of people have been describing that fuzziness as the screen door effect, which is basically it looks like you're looking through a very thin mesh towards the world that you're staring at, rather than something like Oculus, which I found like incredibly, like the clarity on that is pretty
crazy.
it's incredible.
Yeah.
And it's actually like, I remember the earlier versions of Oculus were very disorienting. I tried like a version where you could walk around the Millennium Falcon, and a lot of that is just like it was sort of like a tech demo thing. It wasn't completely optimized.
together,
But I think that like playing Werewolf Within with the Oculus I completely lost that screen door effect.
Yeah.
I was kind of breaking with the sort of clarity on the window frames of it, but it was at no point did I feel like I was looking through a mesh into a backyard or something like that.
And that sort of does exist in PSVR. It's not a deal breaker in any way. It just almost feels like if you own a movie on DVD instead of Blu-ray, and you put it on in the first couple of seconds, you're like, oh dang, like this is
You
on.
can see the graphics.
Yeah, you can see the graphics, but then
It's like playing on 720p versus
Or watching
1080.
Netflix on the Wii.
yeah, but like the second
go that far.
the second something if something is good and you're immersed in it, you stop caring.
It
very
doesn't
quickly.
matter.
Yeah, after like 5
Stop
minutes.
caring very
Yeah,
quickly.
and we're not
Totally.
like we're not the like that's the thing. Like I didn't get into this industry because I'm a graphic snob. I really didn't. I side with a lot of you guys in that art direction is far more important to me than graphic fidelity. That being said, like this entire experience is to simulate the immersion of being in a world you're not, and seeing the sort of the strings behind the puppet show a little bit can break it to an extent.
I played a game actually. I was just looking it up on my phone. It's called Wayward Sky, which is I think it's the first third-person game I've played, unless I'm crazy. But basically, it's a point and look adventure, pretty much. Like you move around in 2 ways. You are in a kind of a third-person view, and you have the controllers or the motion controllers to just kind of point yourself. It's like pointing a laser pointer for a cat, and you've got this. You're playing as this girl, and you walk around in this beautiful area, and it's sort of vaguely isometric unless you move your head, and then you're looking at stuff from different angles. And then when you interact with smaller stuff, like you would in, it's like an old, like an old Lucasfilm or LucasArts game, where like if you're like, go look at this, and you like see a closer thing, and there's like a puzzle, you interact with it like you're in first person.
Yeah.
And I thought it was
I like
a
that.
really cool
Yeah.
way of solving it, like to the point where there's a little bit of a puzzle where I had to get past these robots that were walking around, and then I had to get to this like a cable car elevator type thing. And once I got in the elevator, it was like, yeah, you can start, like you can see it from that view, and you're looking around this level you were just seeing from a different perspective. And I talked to the guy about it, and he was saying that one of his issues is he does get really queasy playing these games, but he wanted to make one anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
Sure.
And it's really the movement that kind of, I think that'll make people more disoriented than
And that's
not.
exactly it right now. If you look back at something like the Vita, the strongest, the best experiences on the Vita are the ones that played to the strengths and weaknesses of that platform,
Yes.
right?
Because they were built from the ground up, and they were meant for it.
It's the kind of
Yeah.
people that were just like like something like Tearaway, right? Which is just sort of like. It's adorable and it's idyllic, and you're sitting there and playing it. You're interacting with the camera and the back touch and stuff like that, and it's all coming together and it's working. I think that like when we heard about the Star Wars thing for this, like a lot of people immediately jumped to Battlefront. It's like, well, that's a fast-paced arcade shooter. That's not going to work for this. But something that will work will be the single-player mission stuff, like the speeder bike sequences, right? Where you're on one and it's on autopilot, and you can speed it up and slow it down and look left and right, and you can crash into a tree, and when you do, it's horrible. But it's built from the ground up for this experience, rather than saying like port everything to it, And I think that's where all these things are really going to shine.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
hoping,
and that's
I'm hoping
where-
it's Fighter Squadron, because
Yeah.
I'll hop in a Fighter Squadron and I'll try to play in first person, and it's just like it's too crazy. But
too
if I
crazy,
had head tracking going on, I would probably barf but enjoy it.
I think the thing that will make VR hit, like it's the thing that will make it successful, is if someone nails that from the ground up thing. Like if Tearaway had broken through and sold 10 million copies,
Right.
like that's the thing that like everyone would want to make games for Vita because it proves it,
Yeah.
And I think for me, there are all these awesome tech demos that get it and they get what works for VR. Someone just needs to make a game.
Yes.
Someone and there will be a dev who figures that out, but they have to figure out how to make that something I want to play for 12
app, as
hours.
they say, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
the one that makes you go, this validates this platform's entire
Totally,
existence,
yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
a lot of people, a lot of things struggle with that. If you look at the PlayStation Move, it never truly resonated because it didn't really have that. I think the Wii reached a lot of people with its bowling game and stuff like that, but you look at something like the Wii U, it never really did. Like 3 years into the console's life cycle, they're like, oh, you can make a Mario Maker level with the touchscreen. You're like, oh, that's smart. Like even if you look at the 3DS, it's moved away from the touchscreen stuff. A lot of iPhone games have kind of moved away from heavy swiping and stuff like that, and they've kind of narrowed down to being more core experiences. So I think we're going to get a lot of gimmicky garbage at the beginning of this thing, and then eventually we're going to get the 2 or 3 pieces of software that just absolutely validate why it exists.
Absolutely. So we've been talking about VR for 45 minutes.
Yep.
It's a
Sorry.
fascinating topic. I mean, no, it's incredible. Obviously, this was the topic of the week, but
It's
there's a
either the
couple
future or it's not.
or it's a huge bust. There's a couple other things we want to, we have to cut the episode a little bit short today because of GDC, but there's a couple of the news items. Literally one that just broke.
Yeah. This was just interesting. Yeah, I didn't mean to like dramatically realize.
I want to talk about that for a second.
So Rime, which is a really pretty game that was first announced at Gamescom 2013.
Yeah, it was by
for
Tequila
PS4.
Works, the studio that did Deadlight, which was a pretty cool XBLA game. That's that gorgeous game that looks like Eco meets Wind Waker.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we haven't heard about it basically since then, and Tequila Works just got the rights back basically. So Sony is now no longer publishing Rime.
Wow.
Which is really interesting, and we don't know what that means yet. This literally just broke, but it's just one of those really interesting cases of like, where is it? And I wonder if that game's kind of been reworked, or if maybe they bit off more than they could chew, or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe they really realized that they want to do something bigger than what Sony had planned for it.
People were calling it like Sony's Zelda when we first saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, that game
it had a stunning
gorgeous.
debut.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to find out more about it. It's kind of nice, like, to just hear the name, like to know they're still making it.
Yeah. I'm a little, again, literally the story broke 30 seconds ago, but I'm hoping this means this game's further along than we think, and that we're going to get news from it, and that maybe it's coming to everything, and not this game is in a mess of trouble and we will never see it.
Yeah.
So, we'll have more on that shortly.
Meanwhile, we've got Square confirming a new RPG.
Well, so this is what's interesting.
Setsuna?
This was announced at E3. It's actually already out in Japan. Like this game, the game itself is something people have kind of known about for a while.
Yeah, it's never been confirmed for the West.
Exactly. So the news is that it's coming to the West. But the big deal is that in Japan, it came to PS4 and Vita, whereas here it's not coming to Vita. Here it's coming to PS4
and PC.
And Steam. So it's really interesting just because like they have this game done. Like people are playing it right now in Japan. They're translating it anyway for PS4. And they chose to not bring it here, which I would imagine is an install-based thing.
Yeah, and the game's director told our friends at US Gamer that if there was a swell, like the fact he's like, hey, there's a better install base in Japan, and people are playing their Vitas in Japan, and that, quote, if there's a swell of demand in North America, we'll consider it.
And the game looks awesome.
It looks awesome. It's
inspired by Chrono Trigger.
Inspired by Chrono Trigger.
Has like a very old school ATB system.
The battle system looks exactly like Chrono Trigger. It's a it's much better looking than a 16-bit game, but it's something that I would absolutely want to play on a Vita.
That sounds like totally a perfect Vita game.
Yeah,
Weird that they would.
Which is like, I played Severed this week again. That's the Drinkbox game. The Guacamelee guys are working on the Vita game. That's a really cool, like touch-based, sort of really gorgeous cel-shaded roguelike that is, I don't know, seems like one of the last bastions of the Vita, which is a bummer because I love that thing.
That's also coming to mobile, right, or iOS?
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing. Is
Yeah.
it's a touch-based thing, so it can come to anything with a touch.
Did you play that again this week?
Yeah. It's awesome.
That's really good to hear. I played that. It's coming on a year ago. I played it last year's PAX East.
Yeah.
And it was by far my most anticipated game of that show.
Yeah.
And then it went into complete darkness for like a full year.
Yeah.
So, it's good to hear.
Yeah.
Do we have a release date on that?
No, this year.
Damn it.
All right. Microsoft opens Xbox Live for cross-platform play. Will we ever see PS4 X1 cross-play? What would this mean?
So Microsoft says they're open to it. This was cool. This is a cool story. They basically like have done really well with PC and Xbox crossplay stuff, and Sony's obviously done that a little bit with Street Fighter and all kinds of other stuff. But now the question is, Microsoft basically said for Rocket League as an example that it's like, hey, like if they want to make it work, we're open to it. And Sony has sort of not really commented. The only comment has kind of been like, hey, like we're open to discussions and maybe it'll happen.
And Sony has had PlayStation games that work with PC in the past,
like Street Fighter and Portal had some stuff when it came to PS3. And that wasn't really for multiplayer or anything, but there's plenty of connectivity kind of in that closed circle of PC to console in both. But letting them talk to each other, I think, would be really cool. And whatever game is the first to do it, I think, has the potential to do incredibly well.
We have, even in this office, when a game comes out, when it's something like The Division or Destiny comes out, it's like there's a divide in the office of, these two people can't play together because
it's like having friends who go to a different school.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
So the idea
it happens constantly here.
Yeah. So the idea of being able to play, Battlefront or being able to play The Division with anyone. It doesn't matter if they have an Xbox. Like that's great. That's amazing for anybody.
That's how we get closer to Andrew Goldfarb's Utopia.
Yeah,
just the world coming together.
Everyone
I could see.
Let us fight each other finally.
Business wise, I could see why Sony wouldn't want this and why Microsoft would. Yeah. Because by Microsoft saying this, A, it's a good PR move.
Yeah.
And B, it's sort of helps their smaller install base. Whereas Sony at this point would be like, well, no, if you want to play The Division with your friends on PlayStation 4, get a PlayStation 4. So I do like Andrew's Utopia though.
I think it
my
does
band's name as well.
Yeah.
It does lead to people ultimately burrowing closer into the consoles that they have already, rather than being like, I got to buy a second console for this thing.
Yeah, sure.
If like you can connect with everybody on Xbox One through PS4, then like why buy a PS4?
Yeah.
So I can see why Sony would be like, what do we have to gain from this?
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, like,
Utopia.
on paper it sounds awesome, but it's like that's not how a business works
I know.
either. So it'll be. I'm fascinated by this. Like, I always like when stuff like this even gets mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Now it is time for rapid fire.
Yeah, we're only going to do like 2 of these today. We'll keep it quick. Thank you guys for writing in. There's also, if you haven't been in the Podcast Beyond Facebook group, please join that. It's like literally one of the only 2 things I do on Facebook anymore is the groups I'm a part of. That and I Heart Horses. No, that's not true. Austin Campbell says, what worlds from other media do you want to visit in VR the most?
Star Wars.
They already said Star Wars, so that was the top of mind, right?
Yeah.
Like 100%. Like I want to walk around that market in Jakku, and I want to like go to Jabba's palace and like and mess with everybody while they're asleep on the floor and
Just look at his butt.
Yeah,
Just get right in there.
At a Star Wars Celebration, they had a giant life-size Jabba the Hutt.
Did you look at his butt?
I looked at the back of his ass for the first
He
time.
doesn't
in
really
history.
have a butt. He's kind of on it, but
He's
he's got this like
he kind of
he's got
is a
this,
butt.
He's got this shoulder. He's got this shoulder butt.
Yeah, he's got like it's like a
Like those ladies at the fair.
like back love handles basically, but he's like 80% that. It's like neck fat. It's like when you see those guys that have like
he's got a cool tattoo.
Yeah, he does. I
Jabba
know
has a
that.
tattoo?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a weird little tribal thing on his arm.
It says mom, it's a heart with an arrow through it. What about you guys?
Honestly, like any sort of thing, like I'm
Any
imagining
sci-fi
stuff
thing's
from
interesting.
yeah,
like
or
walking
like,
around the ship from Firefly or something.
or like King's Landing, or
totally.
I don't know, something like when you were mentioning what was his name, Gimme the Gull, whatever the hell that thing was called, like a Pixar setting, like wandering around Andy's room in Toy Story.
You want to go
like
explore a child's bedroom in VR?
Max, get out of there!
Well, it's
we're talking about Jabba's ass crack. I can talk about
Gets a consenting adult
I can
worm.
talk about I can talk about a home invasion of a fictional bar.
we talked about last week of how cool like there was an Unreal Engine 4 remake of Ash's room from Pokemon, and it's like that cool thing of like
Andrew and I like exploring boys' rooms.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you mentioned PlayStation Home briefly. Like that to me is the ultimate. That would be a really cool thing if Uncharted 4 comes out and they release an Uncharted 4 experience where you can walk around whatever it is.
I would
Bird Dog's
I
Nest.
really want to walk through like just a highly hyper realistic version of the village from Resident Evil 4, like just the beginning, and just hearing that chainsaw like in the background, which is still one of the most terrifying noises. in the
quickly
world.
just take it off. You're like, I'm out.
I would happily jump back into GTA 5 in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
To just
walk
drive
around New
around.
York.
Yeah.
Just check it out. Like
Yeah.
just go explore. Like I mean, so one thing I thought was interesting about Far Cry Primal is that you didn't have cars or a helicopter, so the game seems so much bigger.
Yeah.
And if you try to play games without like fast travel, or if you try to play GTA without going to find blimps or helicopters or whatever, and you're just driving and walking everywhere, it's slower. Like it's a lot bigger. And
No, I mean I love that. I would love Jurassic Park. I would love like a dinosaur world, like some either set in modern times or just here you are in prehistory. Just drop me into a crazy volcano island full of giant lizard monsters. That sounds great. Brandon Dransfield says, for Andrew, Persona 5, how do you think they will summon their personas?
Oh, we actually know. It's awesome. This is like a 30-second here. Ooh. I get excited for Persona. So in Persona 3, they had this thing called the Evoker, which is the gun they shot themselves in the heads with. Persona 4 didn't really have anything. They just kind of yelled Persona and they popped out.
That's really dumb.
In 5, it's like really, you can see it in the trailer if you go slow. It's actually like insane. They have these masks on, and when you get a Persona, it's a mask.
Sort of like a
And they
ball,
literally-
like bald mask.
Yeah, exactly.
You're
Like
going to the eyes wide shut sex party.
Yep. And they're fused to your face, and they literally rip them off, and there's blood that splashes out. It's like totally gross and wonderful
with
and
you?
awesome.
Yeah, you have all
right.
these cute dogs on your desk, and all of a sudden kids are
Sounds
ripping their faces
adorable.
off.
And finally, Sarah Crow says, favorite ice cream flavor?
Cookies and cream.
That was mine for a
dough.
while. Cookie dough was mine for a while. I'm more of a coffee
man.
guy now. There's a company called Three Twins in San
Yeah, Three
Francisco
Twins is great.
that makes incredible ice cream. If you're ever here, pick some up. I think they probably ship everywhere. Too.
Like a day ago, I tried this Smitten ice cream. Has cookie dough with pretzels and chocolate
Oh
chips
my
in it.
God.
It was awesome.
Oh my God. Where did you
Wasn't
get
that you were
that?
sick
From
and-
Sprig, actually. Yeah.
Oh, they delivered it to you?
This week they have Smitten ice cream.
Oh my God.
So I don't get ice cream a lot, but I'll go for like coffee if I'm out and about
Yeah.
because it kind of keeps you moving. But I'm like a big sucker for like peppermint. I love peppermint.
Have you ever had like an affogato?
No.
It's basically vanilla ice cream with an espresso shot poured over it.
Oh, I had one of those at a restaurant.
Yeah,
I don't know how to say it though.
It's so good.
I forgot. I also have the
Speaking of
So I just pointed the thing in the menu, so I avoided all shame. Yeah.
I'll have an espresso shot poured into one avocado.
If you're ever at a fancy restaurant and you don't know how to say a thing on the menu, a good trick is to point at it and say, "I'll have the," and then just yawn.
And hopefully in the
and they'll go that one, and you go,
Although, like culturally in Japan, they don't like that. Like the pointing thing, you have to do like sort of a hand gesture. Like it's not really a finger.
Yeah,
point
but if
thing.
I was
It's
like
kind of
pointing to a specific word on this
one with your
page,
middle
and I was
finger,
just like, I'm pointing to like 30 words right now.
they love
these curries.
in Japan, they love when weird-looking Americans come over and just point at things with middle fingers everywhere.
Most people actually carry around smaller plastic hands with pointing fingers on them, and they just use them.
Like a finger on top of your finger, like a full hand. I love that. Oh my God. That's a good idea.
I'm finally going to Japan soon. I'm really excited.
Cool.
We have a cool secret trip coming.
Finally, we had a very tragic thing happen to a very close friend of ours through Podcast Beyond named Levi. Levi's son passed away after...
Eric's son.
Eric's son passed away. His son Levi passed away after numerous attempts at surgery to save his life. We set up a GoFundMe thanks to our good friend Evan over in the Podcast Beyond Facebook group. Thank you guys so much for setting that up. We've raised $2,000 already. We're keeping the thing open for a few more days. To help out, you can just give $1 or $5 or $50 or just spread the word on your Facebook or your social media. That's anything you can do to help. Go to GoFundMe.com/LeviR. That's LEVI Thank you guys so much. One last thing. My good friend Thomas Rakowitz, who played guitar on 3 songs on my album, just put out a new album himself. It's called The Musings of Balance, and you can get it at his Bandcamp. I'll tweet out the link. But look for Thomas Rakowitz. I don't think there's a lot of guitarists with that name, so you should probably be able to find that.
I really like that name, The Musings of Balance.
Yeah, it's really cool. Album cover's really awesome.
RAKOWITZ,
yeah,
I think.
it's a double disc album. I think it's like some of it's free, some of it's pay what you want. So yeah, go get it.
Yeah, support your local music. On that note, we're going to go check out GDC and hopefully have some cool new stuff to talk about next week. Thank you all so much for joining us. As always, you can find us on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Marty is McBiggity with 2 G's and 2 T's.
Yes, sir.
Brian is Agent Bizzle, and Andrew Goldfarb is Garfap.
Goldenrod.
Jalden Jar.
Awful Twitter name.
Golden Whispers.
Goldenhar.
All right. Thank you guys, and beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond.
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 My throat got all messed
You're
up.
right.